Rocking on this. I'm very excited to do this because last week we had a really good response. A lot of people were excited to hear the information. I got a lot of emails, especially afterwards with the recordings, just people saying like, oh, this is very valuable stuff. And this sales stuff is what I'm passionate about teaching because it's, for so long in my coaching business when I started off, I going through school, like I felt like I learned the great parts about how to become a great coach, and I was constantly practicing that. But I saw myself and classmates focusing so much on, I'll practice coaching and becoming a great coach. And, from doing other businesses in the past, I had a personal training business. That's where I started off at before I transitioned into coaching, is I realized that I'm like, I need to start to understand the business of coaching. And I need to understand the sales process better, and through the mentor I worked with. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching this, because we've got to work and become a better coach. Because if someone hires us and we suck at being a coach, then they're not going to want to work with us. We're not going to get referrals, and we're not going to get paid after that. But in the meantime, in order to get clients and attract clients, we've got to understand that sales process. And that's why we're doing all this great stuff. So excited to hear people enthusiastic about it and getting benefits from it. And I love to hear stories of, especially as you listen to the information and consume it, but more importantly, practice it. I'd love to hear stories and share with me of how this has helped you actually close and get clients. I want to hear the stories of like, yeah, you know what, Jeff? I just got a client today or yesterday or last week, and I tell you, if it weren't for this call, if it weren't for something you said, I can tell you I wouldn't have gotten that client. And those are the things that I want to hear, because this is the stuff I'm giving you that, because this is the stuff that made the difference for me. So real quick, if you haven't visited my site, sellingcoaching.com, please go there, check it out. Right under the university section, this is where I post all the recordings for these calls, so you can check this out there. And then also I have a lot of other educational videos in terms of all different aspects of selling coaching. So get leads, get clients, and get paid, all those three aspects. So you can check that out. If you're not a part of my database, you can always subscribe right on the landing page there. And I also got a really cool free gift for you in terms of that's going to help you grow your business as well. Also check out my Selling Coaching Facebook page if you haven't liked it yet. I always appreciate that, because to me it's all about sharing this with your friends, your classmates, your peers, etc. My goal is to build the tribe of coaches who are not only great at coaching, but great and understand the business of coaching, and who want to get paid what they're worth for the value that we bring to the market. And that's one of my great mentors, Jim Rohn, and I don't know if any of you know him, but he actually passed away, gosh, I think it's like 3 or 4 years ago, but I had the honor of sharing the stage with him at a multi-speaker event many years ago. And the first time I saw this guy, he just blew me away, and he taught me philosophy. He's a great philosopher of personal development and business. And he just put everything in a very simple term. And he said that, we get paid for the value that we bring to the market, very simply. And that's why it's so important that we work on ourselves and we make ourselves more valuable. And in the great world of entrepreneurship, that's what this is about. It's about bringing value. And that ties in, obviously, with what we're talking about in terms of objections, especially the money objection. It all comes down to the value piece. So with that, that's where I want to get into kind of a quick recap of what last week was, and we'll jump right into the new content as well. But the recap is something valuable, because I'm not going to go into it elaborating it too much, but the key points are going to be good to hear for that repetition. And before I get into that, kind of a lead into it, if you will, is I went to the beach this weekend, and I have my son Keaton and my niece Ella, and they're both 9, and it's really cool to see the dynamic of them together. I wrote a little bit about this in my email today, but the interesting part is sometimes I always relate things back to selling, but it's so true, because selling takes place all the time. But you'd see like my son or Ella, talk to each other, and they try and, if you will, sell each other an idea of, what they would play at any given time, And when they were selling, and this is what a lot of people do, a lot of us will do, especially when we're not quite understanding what this is, and this is what we experience as uncomfortable selling, is they were telling each other what they would do, and then they would tell each other why it was good. And even if the other person didn't like it or wasn't, quote, buying into the idea, the other person just kept telling them, oh no, this is what we need to do. And they kept telling them, and the other person objected. And the more the other person told them why it was good and kept pushing on the fact, the more the other person objected and resisted. And that's a very common aspect as to what we do, as adults even, because we don't understand the things that we're teaching. And that's why I feel it's so important to understand this stuff. And when it comes down to it, it's like we have to understand, what is that other person interested in? What are they looking for? And if we have an idea, it doesn't mean we can't have ideas and we can't suggest things to people. Like on some of the other calls, I'll say, hey, have you ever considered coaching? Have you ever considered working with a coach? Is that something you'd be interested in? When we ask kind of those questions, we're not saying, hey, you should hire a coach. Or, hey, you should hire me. I'm a coach. I can help you. Right? What if that person's really not that interested? Right? So now we want to find out in this kind of example, it's a good parallel. It's like, well, what are you interested in? What are you looking for? What would you like to play? Now, obviously, a 9-year-old's not going to do that, nor should a 9-year-old do that. However, there's a point as we grow up from 9 years old, especially in the world of entrepreneurship and having our own business, is we don't want to still be like the 9-year-old and, kind of telling that person why it's going to be good. Or if someone does give us an objection, kind of talking them through it and talking them and trying to convince them that they could find the money or that we could work through whatever the objection is. It was actually interesting on a few different Facebook groups. Since I posted the recording of the last call through the weekend, I kind of posted, hey, just threw it out there to a bunch of different coaches, and I said, hey, you know what? What are your biggest challenges on objections? What challenges do you have? What fears do you have? What's the most uncomfortable? I said, hey, I'm going to be doing a call on this, and I'd love to know what your challenges are, so hopefully I can answer some of those questions on the call. And the interesting part was, every single person who responded, and over the course of the different forums, there was about 10 or 15 people, every single person that responded, not one of them actually told me what their fears or challenges were. Every single person told me what they did. Well, here's what I say. Here's what I do. And every single one of them told me things that they would say in that situation. And every single one of them, if I were to kind of read them all off, which I'm not going to, but all of them easily fell under one category. And that one category was they were telling the potential prospect how they should feel. They were telling the potential prospect of why their product was so good or why their service was so good and why they should reconsider. Or they were trying to, quote, convince them as to why their objection maybe wasn't valid. And so, again, one of the biggest messages I want to get across to you tonight in terms of a bottom line message is that when someone objects, we have to understand really what it is they're actually saying and what that actually means. And we have to now use our coaching skills in order to find out kind of the bottom line of where they're at. And this is what I really want to get across to you is this is really all about us, getting and drawing out honesty through them, an honest conversation, so they feel comfortable enough they feel comfortable enough with us to tell us the truth. And what do I mean by telling us the truth? This is part of the recap from last week is that people lie, right? People are afraid to tell us the truth. People are afraid to decide, and more importantly, people are afraid to say no. People are just afraid to say, you know what? I'm not interested. I'm not interested. No, thank you. You know what? Now's really not the right time for me, but you know what? Maybe if something changes, we can talk later in the future. People are afraid to say that. So it's so important for us to be able to create that trust and create an honest conversation so they feel comfortable telling us exactly how they feel and where they're at any one given point. So this is part of the recap. So essentially, one of the key points I said last week was it's never about the money. And I said it's about value. Just remember, when someone wants something bad enough, they're going to go out and buy it. They're going to go find a way to get something that they want bad enough. Unless it's ridiculously priced, like, okay, I want to buy a Ferrari. Great. I don't have, $300,000, $400,000 just kicking around to buy a Ferrari. So I might want it bad enough, but that's way out of my price range, for instance. But in terms of what we're talking about is they're going to go spend the money somewhere else. And it could be on another coach. It could just be on things that are really unimportant to them. We have to remember that the money objection is about one thing. It's about value. Every price is too high until someone sees the value. If they don't see the value, what's going to happen is they're going to object, or they're going to resist, or they're going to hesitate. And that's why we give them a complimentary session, or we give them a trial, or whatever we're presenting them with, because they get to experience it. And when they experience it, that's when they start to see the value. And if it's high enough in their eyes, even when you give them the price, if the price is higher than, let's say, what they're expecting or maybe hoping, if they want it bad enough and they see the value, they're going to find a way to pay for it. They're going to find a way to buy it. And that's a fact. You have to think about yourself. There's been a time where you wanted something really, really badly, and you looked at it, you experienced it. I don't care if it was a tangible object or a product or a service or whatever it was. And then when it came time to find out what the price was, you either like, okay, well, that's kind of what I was expecting, or maybe it was a little bit higher, or maybe it was like, whoa, that's so much more than what I was expecting. But unless it was absolutely ridiculous, like let's say the Ferrari example, you went and found a way to make it work because you wanted it bad enough and you saw the value in it. That's what we have to remember. So if people are objecting, it's because they have not seen that value yet. Remember, people object because they haven't seen the value, and more importantly, even if they start to see it, they're afraid to decide, and they have challenges deciding. Remember, I also said they're afraid to say no. And that's why I said one of the things last week, I said we're a decision collector, meaning we're looking for a yes or a no. Anywhere in between, it leaves us hanging, it leaves us undecided, and we don't know what to do, and that's a very bad place to be. So we always want to be very open with them and always giving them the exit door, giving them permission to say no. Those are all very important facts. Those are all very important things to make someone feel comfortable. That allows them to become more honest with you. And other things to remember is that our products and services, they represent change, and people fear change. It represents unknown for them, and people, you've heard the term, they're comfortably numb, and it's, the status quo. That's another Latin thing, status quo actually is not a great place to be in. That literal translation is the mess that we are in. Like, people just stay in that place. And while people have great intentions, unless they're typically at the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, or they're really, really badly wanting something to do it, the rest, the intentions are great, but the timing just isn't right. And that's what we have to realize, is we're looking for the serious people who are really want to do something about what they're telling you they want to do something about. And it's our job to gauge that through our, if you will, interview process, and that's, if you will, the qualifying process. Remember, I said the best way to handle the money objection is not to get it, meaning we've got to qualify these people. Take more time to qualify people and find out if they're really serious. It's not like you have to really just make this a long, drawn-out process, but create a quick conversation with a phone. Go back and forth over email, and take your time and recognize that if they want it bad enough, it's going to show up. They're going to be answering the questions that you present to them. What's your motivation for wanting this? What are you looking for? Why is this so important to you right now? Questions like that. They are going to be engaging with you. If someone seems distant or taking a lot of time in between emails or things like that, or not responding very quickly, doesn't mean they're not interested. It just means that, maybe that's a clue. I've got a couple videos on my Selling Coaching University, is how to follow up, and they're real life examples. Now, those are a couple longer videos. One's, I think, an hour, one's like maybe even an hour and a half, I think. And I go through real life examples of back and forth real email inquiries from potential clients, and some I got and some I didn't get as a client, and I talk you through them, and those are definitely worth the investment of time, because you're going to start to see the process. I walk you through the process that I go through and what goes through in my head, why I say what I say. It's going to help you kind of see some of this stuff I'm teaching here in action. And again, the reason why I'm doing it in this style is because this is how I learned. It wasn't, there's a lot of sales stuff out here, and trust me, this is not me knocking any sales stuff out there, because, everything has its value. What I realized was that, when it comes to selling, there's scripts and there's mechanical processes and there's steps, etc. But when it comes time for sales, there's all that stuff goes out the window, because sales is 0-bit mechanical and 0-bit scripted. It's every bit in the moment and flowing and objective, and just it's like water. And you've just got to be there. And that's a great part about being coaches, is understanding that sales in this process is, it's pretty much what we're trained for. It's asking questions and listening. But now on the other side of that, it's like we have an agenda, and our only agenda is, well, sure, we want them to hire us, of course. But our agenda, again, is to collect that decision, yes or no. And that's, at the end of the day, what our agenda is. But then we ask and listen, and we listen for those hesitations. We listen for those decisive pieces. So now we're just starting to jump into some really new content right now. And that's when you get to, I said, the best way to handle the money objection is not to get it, meaning to qualify them, right? But the biggest thing is we don't want to close. We don't want to go over our prices and all that good stuff until that we know they're ready to buy. In other words, I want them to convince you. When I'm at the, if you will, end of a coaching call, a complimentary session, I'm not going to close. When I say close, that means, okay, I'm going to go over my prices, ask for the sale, and then take care of the rest. I don't do that until I've asked a closing question, and I'm going to go over that in a second, and they've convincingly answered. So in other words, we get to the end of the call, and we can say, hey, at this point, have you decided, or have you seen the value in hiring me as your coach? At this point, can you see yourself working with me as your coach? You see how I'm asking a closed-ended question, meaning a yes or no question. Because coaches were always taught to ask open-ended questions. This is the greatest time where we actually want to ask a closed-ended question. Again, meaning yes or no. Remember, we're a decision collector, so this is why we want to ask this. We want them to either say yes or no, and we want to listen to the intensity, if you will, of how they answer that question. So at this point, are you ready to hire me as your coach? Are you ready to move forward? These are some great closing questions. Are you ready to get started? Are you ready to change the quality of your health or of your business? Are you ready to get going? Are you ready to take advantage of me as your coach? Are you ready to take advantage of hiring me as your coach? Have me on your side. Are you ready to commit? What credit card would you be putting that on? Jumping right into it. When would you like to begin? Any of these are great closing questions where we can kind of get the decision from them. And are you ready to find out more details about hiring me as your coach? So at this point, we ask that question, and then we listen and find out, where are they strong on the yes side, or are they hesitating? Because remember, I would say, 9+ or more of people out of 10 are not going to say no. They're just going to hesitate. They're going to dance around it. They're going to start, hesitating, and then start giving that objection. So it's like, when do we close? It's remember, even though the call, if you will, is an hour or so, let's say our complimentary call is an hour or so, or let's say you're going through another process with somebody, with some type of presentation, maybe it's with a business, you're sitting in front of them, you're talking with them on the phone, all this applies to these situations. Working for, maybe they're considering hiring you to do a seminar or an event. Before you go into any of that pricing and that structure, we've got to understand that we don't want to end this until we start seeing they answer this stuff convincingly, or they start giving you buying signals where they say, when can I get started? How can I do this? Or tell me more about your coaching. Tell me more about your prices. Tell me more about how this works. Let's get started. Tell me more about the details. Maybe if you're in a face-to-face meeting, they start leaning forward. There's direct eye contact. These are all great buying signals. The stall signals, the signals that we want to listen for, is the wells, the let me think, I don't know, or the pauses, the indecisive language. I don't know, maybe, possibly. Maybe they're in front of you, they're consistently shifting in their seat, they're crossed their arms, they're clearing their throat, especially on the phone. Anytime they're clearing their throat, you can sense uncomfortability. We really want to be great at sensing this, not only at this closing point, but all through the process, even before the complimentary session. We want to sense these hesitations, etc., because these are signals. These are stall signals, meaning they're either not interested, they haven't seen the value yet, depending on where you are in this process. And remember, if we get an unqualified prospect to this process, we're more likely to get an objection. If we are in this process, even with a qualified prospect, if we close too early, meaning if they haven't quite seen the value yet, and we're kind of moving to close and moving to ask, for them to hire us, et cetera, and they haven't quite seen the value yet, meaning even if you've gone through your whole complimentary session, and it's 45, 50 minutes in and you got about 10, 15 minutes left in the session, and they haven't answered those closing questions I just went over not too long ago, they haven't answered them convincing them, well, you're closing too early. Like I said, if you start to go into that stuff, you're going to more likely run into an objection. There's really very rare where people will say no, right? It's always the hesitations in the middle. So we got to sense out and flesh out, hey, is this a real no? Are they really trying to say no? Or is this something that they're like, all right, well, I have a few questions I need to answer a little bit. And that's where we can kind of get down to that real answer. And so that's a really big piece right there. So when I talk about conditions and I talk about objections, so there's objections and then there's conditions. So objections are things that we can get around. Objections are unanswered questions, things like that. But conditions are things, I briefly went over this last week as well, but just elaborate on this a little bit. Conditions are things that they can't quite get around. And hopefully we learn about these earlier on, but conditions might be some things like if they are going through a divorce, they're foreclosing on a house, they've lost their job, things like that, where maybe they can't be spending any money. I've worked with people, especially in a situation where I'm working with coaches who are looking to transition from their job. Some of them have maybe quit their job already. They're living off of 401k or money that they've saved. So these are, anytime you get conditions like that, you want to see if it's a condition that you can work around or work through, or if it's something that you absolutely cannot get around. And again, ideally, you want to establish that as early on in the process as possible. If you don't either ask the questions to flesh some of that out, or through the conversations you've had prior to this, nothing comes up like that, or you haven't kind of asked about it a little bit more, and you get to it at the end of the process, well, you're kind of up against a situation that you can't back out of, or just that you just really can't get around at that point. So that's where we want to be aware of those things early on. Again, all this is to make your process that much more enjoyable and more importantly fun, so you don't have to deal with this. Now we're going to talk about something called the takeaway. So the takeaway is exactly what it says, is that you're taking something away from the potential prospect. Think about it with related to kids, because a lot of people have been around kids whether you have them or not. And like I know as my son when he was younger, especially, or even now as a 9-year-old, right? If a child has a toy or something that they're playing with, and you just walk right up unannounced and you take that toy and you just yank it away from them and just see what happens. Well, if they were really invested in playing with that toy and they really were having a lot of fun and they wanted that toy, what's the reaction going to be? It's not going to be good, right? There's going to be some serious whining going on and give me that back and crying if they're a baby, right? And there's going to be some serious pushback. And they're going to basically be saying, hey, what did you take that away from me? Or wait a minute, no, I want that back. I was really enjoying that. I'm really interested in that toy. I want that. But if I walked up to a child and I just took the toy away from them and then they just kind of went, and they just kind of looked down, picked up the next toy, or just kind of turned over and went to the next toy and just started playing with it, guess what? They probably really weren't that into that toy, or maybe they just started to pick it up and it's like, yeah, they're kind of done with it, or they're really not that interested in it. So the takeaway in this situation is really no different. Is, if we're sensing hesitation and if we're sensing a lot of balking, if you will, and the wells and the very indecisive language, or I don't know, and things are tight, and again, this stuff applies to the whole process. This applies especially to the very, very beginning of the process especially, but even at the end when we're starting to close, is I'm going to take it away from them. And I'm going to say, listen, you know what? It sounds like the timing might not be right for you right now, or I'm sensing a lot of hesitation right now. Tell me more about that. Maybe I'll start to clarify it a little bit first, or, tell me a little bit more, or elaborate on, what I'm feeling here. I'm getting the sense that, having a coach or right now in your life, might not be something for you. Is that correct? And what I'll do is that if I'm getting that or they're not quite answering it, I'm going to take it away from them and say, you know what? Listen, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. It sounds like, coaching right now is not the right timing for coaching in your life. So I'm going to go ahead and take it away. I'll go ahead and let you go. And you know what? If something changes, you have my contact information. You can follow up with me, and we can go from there. How does that sound? And I throw it back to them. How does that sound? Or else I'll have a pause right there and see what they say. So basically what I've done is I've taken the toy away from the baby, if you will, and I'm going to see if they start going, well, no, wait a minute. No, I am interested. Because this is a great way to find out, if someone's interested, especially earlier on. A takeaway is almost like a trial close, meaning you're trying to see how interested they are, or it does. I can tell maybe someone you're emailing back and forth, and maybe they're taking a little while to get back to you. Hey, you know what? I understand that it's taking you a while to get back to me. I understand you're really busy right now. Maybe now isn't the right time for us to talk about this. Maybe right now isn't the right time for us to set up a complimentary session. Maybe now isn't the right time for coaching in your life. Tell me more about that. We could always do this at another time and see what they come back with. They might write, oh my God, no, I'm sorry. You know what? I just had a lot going on, blah, blah, blah. I'm really interested. And now I'm on the other line or on the other end of the email going, okay, great. If this is at the end of the call and they're hesitating and I'm like, you know what? It sounds like this isn't right for you right now. Why don't we follow up? Why don't we do this another time when it is right for you? How does that sound, or how does that feel? Or just kind of not even ask a question and pause. If they are coming right back at me, so no, wait, Jeff, no, I am interested. And if they've given me the money objection already, then I'm like, okay. So what I'm hearing is that you are really interested, but you're telling me that money's tight right now. So tell me what's really going on. Tell me what's really happening right now. Again, if you notice, I'm always going to go back and I'm going to bring it right down. And once I've rope them in and I understand now, like, no, they are interested. If I've gotten the money objection, at this point, I'm gonna say, okay, tell me what's really going on, So a couple other things I like to say in terms of the takeaway, I like to say it a bunch of different ways, if you notice, because everyone has different styles and things that they're comfortable with. I might say, I can appreciate where you're coming from, but it doesn't seem like the timing's right for you. Is that correct? You sound like a nice person, or you sound like someone who's really interested, but I'm going to go ahead and let you go because that sounds like the timing just isn't right for you. When you feel more comfortable about creating a decision, here's my contact information. And then I would pause after that and just kind of see what they say. You sound like someone who's actually very committed. However, I can sense right now that you're not as committed as you'd like to be. So I'm going to go ahead and let you think it over. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. And why don't you go ahead and follow up with me when the timing's different or the timing's better for you. If you notice, a lot of these have to do with timing, and I use timing a lot because the reality is at this point, or even earlier on, like I said, most everybody has a need to change or to grow their business or to change their health or to go after something. Everyone wants to get healthier, wealthier, or improve their relationship on some level. To the degree with which they want to do that is obviously different for everybody. But so someone might have a really, really big need. But as I said many times in what I teach, what sales is all about two things: need and timing. And they can have a great need, but if the timing's not right, you do not have a lead. You do not have a potential client. You just have someone who wants something really bad, has really great intentions, but the timing's not right for them. So that's why a lot of these takeaways, I talk and I bring up the timing. I want them to, someone's going to convince me that, no, the timing is right. Great. Why is it right? Tell me about it. And I might even say, convince me, because I'm sensing that it might not be right. So yeah, you got my ear. Tell me about it. Convince me on it. So obviously the timing's not right for you. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go. When you're serious, here's my number and you can let me know. That's a lot more direct. And if someone ever says, why don't you follow up with me? This is at any point in the process. Can you follow up with me? Or why don't you follow up with me? Here's what I'd say. I would love to, but I'm not going to do that because honestly, 9 out of 10 people, or if not 10 out of 10, would never get back to me. So I'm going to go ahead, with all respect, I'm going to go ahead and give you my number and my email, and please call me or email me when you're serious or when the timing's better. So I want someone to follow up with me. I'll say, you know what? I could follow up with you, but if you really want this bad enough, you have my information. You know how to reach me. You're on my email database, so you'll be getting emails from me. So if something changes, reach out to me, and I'm here for you. And that's why. And I'm telling you this because this is so important. Because I can't tell you how many people I would follow up with. I can't tell you how many people I would get so excited about and emotionally invested in because I was foolish, right? And what I mean by foolish is I didn't understand this to the way I understand it now and the way I'm teaching you. So I was foolish and I was uneducated on the aspects of selling. And I would invest emotionally in people who weren't at all emotionally invested in me. And relive college and some dating that I had, at some point, maybe hopefully not, but I'm sure we've all been at some point maybe interested in somebody else from a dating perspective, and we had a crush on somebody and they didn't even know we existed. I kind of compare it to that as like, we're just all excited about this. Oh, there's this great lead I have, and there's this great person. I really think they're going to hire me. I'm really excited about it. And we really haven't talked to them or done any of the stuff that I'm talking about yet. And it's just like, yeah, I'm going to get married to them and have their kids, and they don't even know you're on the earth. So it's the same type of thing. Is all this stuff I'm teaching you here, especially giving it back to them. And hey, if you want to follow up when you're interested, you have my information. I'd love to hear from you. And letting people go. This is the takeaway. Don't be afraid. Let people go. Here's the exit door. Give them permission to say no. Reiterating a lot of things I've talked about in different calls, because this is our way of taking the pressure off of us, detaching emotionally to this person, and knowing that, hey, I'm not saying you don't get emotionally invested in somebody. I get emotionally invested in people when they're qualified, and there's been clients who I'm just like, wow, I'm just so fired up to work with this person, and people haven't hired me, and for whatever reason. And like I said, one of those calls I did on the university, Selling Coaching University, the real life example, how to follow up. I think it's the second one or the first one, but the last one I posted, that was the person where, they even said they'd hire me, and then, a few things happened afterwards, and man, I really wanted to work with this person. I was excited, and but things changed and it didn't work out. I mean, I'm not saying that's never going to happen. I'm saying, find the people who are interested and serious. Those are the people to invest with them. It doesn't mean you're not going to get disappointed or let down, because that happens. But at least you're investing in someone who's coming to the table and invested in you. And that's my message here is put your heart into it, but find out, is this person worth putting my heart into? Are they giving me back something, or is this just all me? Is this just all me following up? Is this all me, pushing this process along blindly so I can kind of pretend that I've got something going on, so that I can kind of pretend that I have leads right now, so I can kind of pretend that I'm busy. And I'm saying this purposely because this is what a lot of clients that I've worked with one-on-one, and I've done this myself in the past, is that we pretend and we trick ourselves that, oh, I've got leads and oh, I've got stuff going on, when really it's like, do you have leads? Do I have leads? Have I qualified them really well? Have I kind of had this mini interview, if you will, and had some great dialogue before I'm setting up these complimentary sessions, so to find out, how serious these people are and how big their need is, and more importantly, how right now their timing is. And this is going to get us, it might be very sobering, it's very sobering in a lot of ways, but this is the stuff that's going to make you better at your business. And this is now you instead of having, 5 to 10 pretend leads, you might have 1 or 2 serious ones. But that's all you need, right? You need 1 or 2 serious ones. Now you're saving a lot of your time. You're investing your time in someone that is really serious about, evaluating what you have to offer them, and that's it. And at the end of the day, a lot of the times, as coaches, if we're talking especially one-on-one or even group clients, a full-time schedule is like 10 to 12 clients a week. That's a lot of coaching calls, and that's what I keep for a client base. And I'm not going to go higher than that, because I invest in people, and that's what I want you to do. Is I want you to invest in people, but the right people. So I diverge a little bit, but it's all very important into what we're talking about there. So now you've gotten through this process, and you've asked them, you've gone over your prices, and now they're giving you the money objection. So this is where I started to talk a little bit about this last week. I'm elaborating on a lot more right now. It's actually handling that objection. If you notice, out of 2 calls, like 80+% of the material is kind of like before we actually get the objection, isn't it? And that's really all. That's why I want you to invest your time there. But you will get to the point, and you will inevitably at some point, you'll still get that every now and then. So again, the best thing you can do, as I said last week, is fulfill the objection. So someone says, I don't have the money. You can say, hey, if you did have the money, would you move forward and coach with me? So I elaborated on that last week. Now let me go into some other questions. So someone says, I don't have the money. Say, what are you going to do about that situation so you're not constantly creating that statement? Again, you might not like some of these questions that I ask, but I'm going to just go off the top of my head and think of some things I say. I got a few jotted down as well. And again, I want you to, again, this will be recorded, so if you want to write down any of this stuff, you can do that. In fact, if you want to email me too, I have some of these typed out. I can send you an email with some of these questions written down, sellingcoaching@gmail.com. But anyways, let me go through some of these. So someone says, I don't have the money. I find it interesting that you ask how much it costs since I've not presented any information to you. Would you like me to let you go or go forward? That might be someone who's saying something at the beginning of the call, or maybe you haven't even set up a complimentary session yet, and so I say, well, how much does this cost? That one's a little bit more direct, but also another response to something like that would be is I'd love to tell you about that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over, we're going to set up a call, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, and if at that point, if you're interested in working with me, we can go over all those details then. How does that sound? And then we move forward from there. And again, I revert back to that a little bit because one of the things I mentioned, and it's very strong, is we never want to give out our prices before the close. We don't want to have them listed on our website. We don't want to be, someone says, hey, how much does this cost? And you're like, oh, it costs, $100 a call or $200 a call, or what does that mean to somebody? It's like there's no value associated with that. And remember, price is always about value. It's like, why would I pay someone $100 or $200 or $500 to talk on a call? One of the coaches I've worked with, it was $500 for a call with them for 30 minutes. Why would you pay $500 to talk with someone for 30 minutes on the phone? That's insane. The guy I was working with, like, this guy was helping me. I mean, I had 30 minutes with the guy. I'm like, that was huge value. But how is someone going to know that just without, when they don't even know anything what you're talking about? So that's why this stuff's so important to understand. Someone says, I don't have the money, or money's tight right now. And you say, oh, how long have you been saying that for? I'm curious, what do you plan on doing about that? You say, I can appreciate that, but if money weren't the issue, would you get started right now? Right? Same thing, fulfilling that objection. I'm curious, if your life depended on it, can you see yourself coming up with that money in the next 1 to 2 days? All right? You can say, I'm curious, how much is your desire to change the quality of life? All right, I'm curious. I know one of the things you were talking to me about is, let's say, growing your business or changing X, Y, and Z. How important is that to you right now? Right? If you really have that desire, how long do you think it will take you to come up with that money so we can get started? Again, these are just different approaches to see what they say. Another thing is I can appreciate that. Let me ask you, why did you come here today? Why did you call me today? And again, that's one where we're starting to bring them back to their emotion. This is an important piece is money objection, or any objection for that matter, is a very logical piece, meaning I'm in my head. Whenever you start the close and you're going over the prices with somebody, it starts to become a logical process. Now they start to think in their head. Logic, being in our head, is where fear, doubt, insecurity, overwhelming feelings lie. When people are there, unless they really see the value and they're really excited about moving forward, and even if they are, they still kind of get that paralyzed. I mean, think about something that you bought, and it might, you're investing a good amount of money. Even if, let's say, it's a flat screen TV or a brand new car or whatever it is that you're looking for, that your wedding dress even, or whatever it is. But something that you're probably or definitely spending a lot more than you think you'd ever would, or that you'd ever consider spending it on something, you start thinking about it. But if you really want it bad enough, you'll move forward with it. You just have to think about it a little bit. You have to think about it and figure out a little bit so it makes sense for you. A lot of people have to start rationalizing if they want it that bad. But what our job is at this point is we start sensing this hesitation. We start sensing this logic and this paralyzation. Through the questions we ask them at this point. A great way to do this is to bring them back to their emotion. You might even mention, it's like, you know what? You might say, it's like, you know what? When you talked to me originally, one of the things you told me was that you were, sick and tired of dealing with X, Y, and Z, or you were sick and tired about, um, wanting to do this in your life and failing. You know, tell me how serious are you about that, or tell me more about that, or tell me, what's changed now, or get them talking about their goal, get them talking about their why of why they're doing this. Remind me, what was your motivation for wanting to talk to me again? One of the things you said to me at the seminar where I met you, or through the email when you emailed me initially, was, Jeff, or whoever it is, I really liked your style. I really like the information. I'm considering working with a coach or something like that. Tell me more about, why did you really want to talk to me? You were considering working with my coach. Tell me more about that. Well, how strong is that right now? And get them talking about that. Here's what I'll do with people when I get them talking about that is, if you've qualified someone well and they're kind of turning, if you will, I don't know a better way to call it, but they're turning at this point, meaning all of a sudden they're getting logical on you, or they're starting to hesitate. Whereas, maybe you feel like, oh, geez, we had a great call, and you could sense that things are going well. I'll bring them back to that emotion. Remind me of what your motivation was, or I'll bring up a few things, and I'm like, it sounded like you're really looking to move forward in that. Tell me what you see. What do you see the value of us working together? Through our call today, tell me some of the things you saw value in as having me as your coach. I want them to kind of point out and talk about some of these things and see if they can say some of that stuff. If they can't answer those questions really well, then odds are at this point it's very clear that they really can't see the value there. And that's why I might bring that up. And it's like, it sounds like, when I ask you those questions, you really can't answer. It doesn't sound like you can really see the value of working with me. Is that true? And that's a great question, because what's the answer to that? It's either going to be like, yeah, you're right. I can't see it at this point, right? Or that's kind of almost like a takeaway. They'll be like, no, I really do see value. Okay, well, what is the value? Tell me what the value is. Tell me what you see, the benefit. And then they'll go ahead and they'll tell you. So that's a great part about kind of that type of a question is it brings someone back around, and you say, it sounds like you really don't see the value in working with me. And they're going to be like, you're right. Well, now you've got your honest answer. Fantastic. Remember, that's where you want to be. It might not be what you want to hear, but that's where you need to be. You deserve to be, because you're at an honest place. Either that, or they're going to start defending and say, no, I do see value. Great. What is the value? And they're going to start talking about it. Another place where I like to get into this, because remember, I understand when someone says, I don't have the money, or finances are tight right now, or, things are a little bit tight, I don't know. We just had, my car just broke down, or, the water heater just broke, or all these stories that people have. It's real, obviously. But again, that has zero bearing on your decision right now. We have to understand that. Any circumstances that are going on in someone's life, they're going through a divorce, their water heater broke, their car broke, their kids are going to college, that is zero bearing on their decision to work with you as a coach or not. Because what it really has bearing on is how serious are you about moving forward with your goal? And how serious are you about, me having you assist you through that process? And how much value do you see based upon our time we've just spent together? And if you see that value, let's find a way to work through this. If you don't see that value, that's okay. I just need you to let me know where you're at, 100% honesty, so I can either let you go or we can move forward in together and rock this thing. Where are you at? You see what I'm doing here? I mean, this is powerful, because you're empowering this person, and you're saying, listen, you know what? I am going to be on your side, and I'm going to fight with you, and we're going to rock this thing together. If you're interested and you really see the value in this, take my hand, baby. We're going to go all the way. If you want it bad enough, we'll find a way to make this work financially, right? I don't change my prices for anybody, but you know what? We'll find a payment plan. We'll find a payment option where it works for you. I never want money to come in the way of, us when there's value together. But if this is something that you really just don't see value in, that's okay. You know what? I wish you the best, and I'll be here if that ever changes. Tell me where you're at. This is like the probably the most passionate, breakdown, if you will, of where are you leaving this person? I mean, I've had 0 people that I've ever done this with, and I've done this just about almost with everybody once they started learning this stuff. If I've gotten down to this place, I've had 0 people not be honest with me in this situation. I've had 0 people. And a lot of those people, and I'd say at this point, 9 out of 10, assuming that they were really interested, they move forward with it. Because they are interested, but they're letting their fear, their doubt, their insecurities, their overwhelm, their logic get in their way of where they buy, and they buy from that emotion. And remember, you're not forcing anyone to buy. This is not forcing, this is not convincing. This is about holding up someone's dream or goal or objective right in their face. You're saying, do you want this? Yes or no? If you want this, how bad do you want it? And why is now the right time? And do you believe that I am the person that can be by your side and assist you through this process? Yes or no? I mean, that's really what it is. And if it has to come down to it, this stuff I'm talking about right here, this isn't just between you and I on this call or you listening to this. This is real life stuff. Say this stuff to somebody. Say it in your own way. But here's what I want to say is, as coaches, we got to be a little bit tougher on these people, and us being tougher on these people by kind of like, taking their butt down by the neck and putting their face in it, and saying, hey, do you want this? Yes or no, all right? And you say that with your own aggression, depending on where you're at and who this person is. You say, if you want this, do you see value in working with me? Because if you do, let's do this thing, baby. And if not, I'm happy to let you go. What do you want? And when you do this, what it also does is I want to pull this out. This is an important why to understand. This actually builds value for us in our coaching process with them. And this is what I've understood by doing this is after people have hired me on the first call or after the call via email, I'll say, hey, at what point did you decide you wanted to hire me? At what point did you create that decision to, I'm doing this. I'm hiring Jeff. I'm working with Jeff. I always ask that question at some point, whether it's right in the beginning of the relationship or even midway through with my clients. And I recommend you do the same, is because I like to understand not only why, but also when they created that decision. Because it helps me understand people more, and more importantly, it helps me understand where my value is to somebody. What did I just say? I said, I want to understand where my value is to somebody. Because when you understand where your value is, remember, value is associated with cost. Value is associated with money. When there's value, people buy. When there's no value, they don't buy. When there's no value or not enough value, they object. And so we want to understand our value. So I'll ask people this. And so what I'm doing here, when I'm just laying this out and putting this right in their face and saying, hey, listen, do you want this or not? Do you want to go after this or not? And if when you get into that place, is you're showing them like you're going to work with them. You are showing them the value of saying, hey, if you're working with me, you're not saying this, but you're saying this, implying it through what you're doing. You're saying, hey, if you're working with me, I'm not going to let you just skid around and pretend and lie and just go back to your, everyday pretend life of the same cycle over and over again, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I'm not going to let you do that. If you work with me, this is the first step. This decision is your first step in the commitment to you moving forward with your goal. Because by hiring me, you're committing and saying, you know what, this time I'm doing something about it. As opposed to like what I've always done in the past is I'm going to pretend that I'm going to do something about it. And I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to join this group. And then I'm going to show up for a week or 2 weeks and then I'm just going to kind of drop out and just fail. And I'm going to say, hey, see, it didn't work. I knew it wouldn't work. And go back to my humdrum everyday status quo life. Right? This is what people do. Say, if you're hiring me, this is your first commitment in saying, you know what? I'm doing this time because this coach, this Jeff, they are not going to let me just settle in anymore because they're going to call me on my shit. And that's what I want you to do. That's what this process is about, is you calling people out and holding it in front of them and saying, this is really uncomfortable right now. And I know that because I do this with myself on a regular basis. And it sucks and it's hard, but I'm like, that's why you came to this call, because you told me that you wanted this. And that's what I do. And if you're uncomfortable, you should be uncomfortable right now. I respect that you're uncomfortable right now because you want to do something about it. And I will say this to people, and I know by hiring me, by actually creating the decision to move forward, by actually investing in coaching, this is your first step in your commitment to yourself. So I understand you're scared right now. I understand why you're telling me that you don't have the money or things are tight right now. I understand that because what's happening is you're scared. So now tell me a little bit more about what you're feeling. And I'm telling you, when you do this with people, they hire you. And there's no game, there's no gimmick, there's no tactic here. All I'm doing is breaking it down, and I'm being 100% authentic and 100% honest. And all I'm doing is I'm doing that, and all I'm doing is I'm expecting it from them as well. And when you do that, it just creates this really synergistic relationship that you're showing people that you're willing to fight for them. But you're also willing to let them go. And by always giving them that door, as I've said many times, by always giving them that door, there's no pressure. That's the beauty of what I'm teaching you right here. There's absolutely zero pressure. At this point, when you do this with somebody, you're not holding someone against their will because they're there. You've already shown them the exit door. You've already given them the out. You've already given them permission to say no. You've already said, hey, listen, if this doesn't work, that's okay. I just need you to tell me. And I'll be like, you know what? Thank you so much. I wish you the best of luck. If something changes, I am here for you. I mean, that's like very relaxing and calming for somebody. And so when they're like that, this is zero pressure. And that's the beauty of this place is it now people, they open up, they're honest, and you know exactly where they are. And a lot of the times that's when you can move forward with people. And if you don't ever do this, then you don't get to that place and they give you something, you just accept it, and then everything's pretend because we never really understood what would happen. They say, yeah, I'll get back to you, or I'll let you know next week once I decide, and then they fall off the face of the earth, they join the next moon mission, and they're gone, even though there's no NASA, or they're not going to the moon anymore, and you're thinking, where did they go? So this is a really, really powerful piece, and this is something like this call, I would listen to this call over and over again, especially the last 20, 30 minutes or so. This is something, what I'm talking about here is, this isn't something obviously that I scripted and I wrote down tonight. This is something that just came out as I go through it because this is what happens in that moment. And that's why I revert back to what I said earlier. There's no scripts, there's no steps to this. It's just, hey, it's just you and I. Where are we at? And is it a yes or is it a no? And either way, I'm okay. I'm just here to fight for you if you want to reach out and take my hand. What's your choice? What are your thoughts? Where are you at? So last thing I'll do before the end of the call is the last piece. No matter where you get to at this point, what you must do before you hang up the phone. Two things. One, well, if they're hiring you and they're moving forward with you, you want to get yourself paid. We're going to talk about that in another call. How do we get paid? What do we do? How do we process it? All the good stuff. But we want to get ourselves paid. We want to schedule our first official, if you will, session. Go over anything you need to do with them. Hey, I'm going to email you, what we talked about in writing, blah, blah, blah. Any of that stuff. But we want to obviously set up our first session. We want to get the payment right then and there. Again, that'll be another call, so I won't go into that too much, but those are important steps there. The other avenue is if you haven't gotten the yes, and there's I still need to think about it, blah, 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 and you've gotten down the honesty piece, and you've gone through everything I've just talked about, and let's say at that point, they're still hesitating. At that point, take it away. Say, you know what? I can appreciate where you're at. I can sense though that there's something going on right now, or there's stuff that you're still, or the timing just might not be right. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you go. And if something changes, you have my contact information. We can follow up from there. If they balk, at this point, if you've gone through everything I've done, at this point they shouldn't balk, because if you go to this point, you take it away, and then they fight back and they're like, no, I really want this. Then I'd go back to everything I just said. If you do that again, or for the first time, and they're still hesitating, they still can't create a decision, then let them go. And that's what I want to make sure you do before you hang up the call is either, okay, we're moving forward, schedule the time, get the payment, go over how it all works and move that forward right there. If it's a no or anything else, we want to just take it away, see what they do. If they're strong about it, go back through the process again. If not, take it away. If they sound like, you know what, Jeff, I really want to do this, but I still do need to think about it, or I still want to talk it over with my spouse or whatever, things like that. Absolutely, I can appreciate that. Let me ask you, how long will it take you to think about it or to think it over? How long do you think it would take you? What type of time do you require in order to process and create your decision? And I'm using these words I'm saying right now very intentionally. Create your decision versus make your decision. These are all very just different energies around these words. How much time will you require? How much time, when do you think you'll get an opportunity to talk with your spouse, to talk with your husband, to talk with your wife? How do you anticipate they'll react? How supportive do you anticipate they'll be around this situation? Anything like that. Fantastic. Listen, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to follow up with me. And you said, probably the beginning of next week would sound good for you. Let me ask you this. If I don't hear from you by the end of the day, Monday, would it be okay if I followed up with you on Tuesday to just kind of check in? Great. So what I do there is all I'm doing is I'm creating closure. I'm not leaving anything out in the open. I'm either saying, yes, we move forward. Here's how this goes. No, take it away. Good luck. Love you, take care, pat on the behind, follow up with me if something changes. Or if they really are genuinely, they're still kind of interested, but they really need time to decide or talk it over, whatever. I can say, I can appreciate that. How much time do you require? Great, fantastic. Listen, get back to me. You have my email. Listen, if I don't hear from you by the end of the day, is it okay if I follow up with you? How would you feel about that? Fantastic. I'm tying this up because what I do now is, if that's the scenario, guess what I do? I turn to my calendar the next week and I go, boom, I write, follow up with so-and-so. If I don't hear from them by Monday, and I forget about that person. And this way I don't wonder, oh my God, how long do they need? When should I follow up with them? It's been 2 days. It seems like a year. And should I call them back? Should I email them? Is it too soon? And we go insane, right? And we don't know what to do. This is all permission-based selling. That's what I call it. And I say, hey, listen, great, I'll follow up on Tuesday if I don't hear from you. Best case scenario, they will get back to me. All right, and if you set this up and you go through this process, people will get back to you. And that's a beautiful part about this is even if they decide no, I've had a much, much higher percentage, like 90+% of people, when they don't hire me, they will get back to me. Whereas before, they couldn't decide, but they never got back to me. They just moved off the planet to Mars. They do that sometimes. But when you take this honest approach, this permission-based approach, they actually get back to you. And that's the cool part is they get back to you and guess what you have? A decision. You've done your job. You've got a yes or you got a no, nothing in between. Whether you got it right then and there, which is ideal, or you've got it a week or a few days later, you've done your job and you're successful as you collected a decision. It's 10 o'clock. I got through everything. So we made it. Hopefully there's a lot of information, but it all ties in together.